cards. Okay, so in the handout packet, not in your progression notebook, okay, so the packet that was sitting on your chair that had the yellow sheet like this, the one you're going to have due for tomorrow. Okay. So the second sheet is like a salmon-ish color, pink. Okay, it says, this is the explanation of blue cards. Okay, so yeah, we will get the blue cards here in just a second. So let's take a look at that.
That was handed out to you, right here.
No, yours isn't.
Oh yeah, sorry, some of you guys have the white.
Yeah. What's it called?
Doctor's preference card.
Third one.
Okay, so what this sheet does is it just kind of gives you an explanation of, number one, why we have you do Dr. Blue cards, what skills it allows you to foster through your preparation for your cases, and then also it gives you a step-by-step of how you're going to complete your doctor cards, okay? So maybe this is going in it. Okay, so at the top, it just tells you the purpose, okay? So I'm sure all of you have heard a senior student complain about blue cards, right? Okay, and it's probably something that you're not necessarily looking forward to, but I will tell you this is another thing that sets our program apart from other programs that we've heard of. So other programs will just have their students, maybe they don't even know what cases they're doing the next day, and they'll show up at the hospital and they're like, okay, here you go, you're going to room 5. Okay, they've done no preparation for their cases, they don't know the doc, they don't know the doc's preferences, those kinds of things. How well do you think those students are going to do during those cases? Probably not very well, okay? And so what we instead would like to have you do is be prepared when you show up at the hospital. And the way that we do that is by getting your cases either the night before or the clinical day before. You're going to know what cases you're going to be doing. That doesn't mean that things don't change, because sometimes they do, especially from like a Thursday to a Monday. But then you'll get the preference cards from the facility. You'll complete a blue card for each of your cases, and that way when you show up, you've researched the surgeon, you've researched the procedure, you know the preferences, and you show up and you feel good and prepared about doing that case. Are you going to be more willing to accept more responsibility if you know more about what's going on? Yeah. And so it's just going to allow you to progress further in your education and also in your experience if you feel prepared when you go into those cases. Plus, do you think you're kind of dangerous if you show up and you go, I have no idea what's going on, right? Yeah, pretty much. And do you think your preceptor is going to let you do anything if you show up and say that? Probably not. Because guess what? Anything that happens during that case is going to fall on them. It's their responsibility. So do you think they're going to be willing to give you some of that responsibility if you show up and you act like you have no idea what's going on? Probably not, okay? So that's why we want you to show up and know what's going on, and that's why we do these blue cards, okay? So they will also allow you the opportunity to research procedures, to look up instruments. Like Cindy said, sometimes you guys are going to be doing cases that you haven't necessarily gone over in procedures class yet. Well, how are you going to have any idea about what's going on in those cases unless you do some research the night before? So this is going to allow you to do that. And it also will allow you the opportunity after the case to kind of reflect on your experience, okay? So let's talk about how we do the blue card and how the blue cards work. So you are at clinical on Monday, okay? So you are there at the end of the day. Laura, Cindy, I, Rick, whoever your preceptor is, gets the schedule for your next clinical day. So for Lincoln, that'll be Wednesday. So we pull the schedule, we look on there, we say, okay, Kayla's going to be in room 5. She's going to do these 4 cases, okay? So at the end of the day, we, either myself or you guys, if you have time, will pull the preference cards. We have books or binders of preference cards that do not have patient information on them, so that you can take them home with you and you can use them in order to prepare the blue card, okay? So we pull the preference cards, you get a blue card for each of those cases, and then at home, Kayla's going to use the preference card and also either her procedures notes, her textbook, YouTube videos, you know, whatever information she needs to be able to fill out the blue card. She comes, so she has class on Tuesday, and then she shows up on Wednesday morning. On Wednesday morning, she's going to show me her 4 blue cards, okay? I'm her instructor. I look at them, I just make sure that they're complete, and I can tell that she spent some time researching that information so that she's ready to go. I'm going to give them back to her. She goes, she does her cases, she scrubs all her cases. After each of her cases, she's going to add more details to her blue cards, okay? So do you think every case goes as we expect it to? No. Okay, and the other thing too is, you know, I might have thought that this doctor's gonna use these instruments, but then they end up using these other instruments or whatever it is. So after the case, it kind of gives you the opportunity to sit down and think about what you just did. Because I can tell you, as we start to do cases, everything just runs together. You can't remember if the details that you're remembering came from your first case or came from your fourth case. Everything just kind of jumbles together. So the ideal situation is that after you get done, you kind of take the time to jot down some notes either on your blue card or on like your journal or whatever, just so that you have the information so that you can fill it in. You add the details, you then turn the blue card into your instructor. They're gonna look at it, see if there's any information that you missed or anything that's incorrect. If it's good, then they'll give it back to you and say it's completed. Otherwise, at the bottom you can see there's a place where they might check mark that it needs corrections. So we might ask you for more information. Now I can tell you in the very beginning what we're looking for on a blue card is totally different than what we're looking for on one that's in the very end. Okay, because obviously you're not gonna know as much in the beginning as you do when you get to the end, but we're just asking for more and more details each and every single time. Okay, so maybe the first time I just want the name, but the next time I want the size, and I want the degree, and I want these kinds of things. And what we're trying to do is get you to start focusing on those details that are going to be really important as you start to become a surgical tech. Okay. All right, so if you should show up at the clinical site without blue cards, do you think you get to scrub your cases? Nope. Okay. And so we haven't talked about this yet, but you can only miss 2 days in Clin Ed 1. And so if you have to miss a day because you didn't do your blue cards, do you think that counts towards your absences? Yep. So that means you only have 1 day. Well, guess what? You're probably going to be sick at some point. Hopefully not, but you probably will. It just kind of happens, right? And so we have that 1 day. Well, you don't want to lose your absences because you didn't do your blue cards. Plus, then you're not prepared and you're missing out on experience. So we make sure that we do our blue cards, okay, so that you're prepared. Also, if you're not doing your corrections, so if you've gotten cards back and you're supposed to make corrections, that's another way that we won't let you scrub. So if you're like 3 weeks behind on corrections, that's a problem. So you need to make sure that you're staying caught up on your corrections. We really try to turn blue cards in either the same clinical day or at least by the next clinical day, because guess what? The cards from Monday, right? So I have the cards from Monday, now I have my cards for Wednesday, and then I have more cards for Thursday, and then I have more cards for the next Monday. If I'm behind, what happens? It just kind of snowballs, right?
So are you saying like when we have corrections, we have to correct it and turn it back?
Yes, exactly. And you're not making a new card. Okay, all you're doing is writing, so I might ask you with what, because like on the back, we'll talk about when we fill it out. Each of the procedural steps, you have to put the instrument that it happened with. And what that does is it helps you to be able to hand instruments during the case. So maybe you forgot on a couple of steps, and I might just write with what. All you have to do is just write the instrument name, and then you're gonna turn it back in. Okay. It just, maybe you overlooked it, maybe you thought you were gonna come back and add it, but you just kind of forgot. So that's fine. It just kind of gives us that time to reflect on our experience so that you can cement it to your long-term memory. If you just go through your experience without ever thinking about what you did, it's not going to be committed to your long-term memory. So that's why we have you kind of take the time to reflect on the details of what you did. Okay? Questions about blue cards, about how we turn them in, how the process works, those kinds of things. Okay? So you get your assignments the night before, they're due the morning of your clinical day, you hand them to your instructor, they just look at them briefly, just for completion. Hand them back to you, you scrub the case, you add the details, you turn them in, okay? Your instructor will look at them, they may give them back to you for additional corrections. If you need additional corrections, you may have to pull the card again, you may have to look up a drug name, you know, something you weren't sure what it was, whatever it is. Make the corrections and then turn it back into your instructor. And then when it's done, then they'll give it back to you, okay?
So your blue cards are another thing you can fold and put in your pocket. So when your case is over and you have a couple seconds, you can pull out that blue card, make changes real quick, and then you're done.
All right, and it will depend. I've had some students who have wanted to keep all their blue cards because, so you're doing a blue card for every case that you get assigned. However, if you have a repeat case, so say Monday I scrubbed a lab chole with Dr. Fitzke, and then I have another lab chole with Dr. Fitzke on Thursday, I don't have to do a brand new card. I might add some more details to it, but I don't have to do a brand new one. But if you have 3 lab choles that are with 3 different doctors, you're doing a blue card for each of those because there's going to be different preferences on each one. Now, can I use the other cards to help me do the other ones? Yeah, they're pretty much the same. The procedural sequence is gonna be pretty much the same. But I need to have the specifics for Norris, Fitzke, Taducci, you know, whatever it is on those cards, okay? So if you have the repeat cases, you don't have to do the blue card again. But if it's a repeat case but a different surgeon, then yes, you have to do it.
So basically, everything we need to take to clinical are blue cards, green cards, and the log.
Yeah, well, you'll take the progression note. Yeah, I would just bring the whole thing, right? Like Cindy said, you might pull out the asepsis portion and the orientation portion minus the table setup packet that's in there. I would keep that in your book for sure. But I would just bring the progression notebook. There's gonna be a place where you can keep it, and then a lot of people will add their blue cards to it. You know, sometimes they'll 3-hole punch them and just keep all their blue cards in there. That way they have them, and that way if you have a repeat case, you can just pull it out and be like,
We've had students get really very, very creative with their notebooks. They'll go and buy the dividers, you know, that are different color coded, and they'll divide everything up, and they'll have one little color folder where they put their extra green cards or their blue cards that they didn't do the case on to save, and so however you want to organize it, they've gotten very creative in organizing it, so that's entirely up to you guys. But the more organized you are, who's kind of a little OCD in organizational skills? Yeah, it's gonna get worse.
We like it though.
And those who aren't, you're gonna get it, because we're very detail oriented and organized. The tables are organized, everything is in sequence, in steps and stuff, so your notebook will kind of get that way too. And maybe some of them won't. I've had some handed in that are just a train wreck. That's their organizational skill. That's how that they keep track. So whatever you guys need to do to keep track of stuff, you'll get it figured out.
okay. So on that pink sheet, it has that step-by-step of how you're gonna fill out the card, how you're gonna turn it in, what you're gonna do with the corrections. So if you're ever not sure about how you're gonna complete the card, this is a good reference for you, okay? So it's just an explanation of how the whole process of turning in blue cards, what's required, what the expectations are, those kinds of things, okay? All right, so everybody grab a blue card or the stack of blue cards so that you can take a look at that as we go through it. So there will be blue cards at the facility. Also, you know, some students like to keep some with them, that way they always have some available to them to complete. Sometimes you might mess up and need a different one or something like that. All right, so at the top we have the name of the procedure, the surgeon, okay, so what's being done, who's doing the procedure. So the surgeon's glove size. So you're gonna find that we're really looking for a lot of details on this, okay? And in the beginning, it might be hard for you to provide those details, but that's just kind of what we're pushing you towards, is the more detail, the better. Okay, surgical techs are very detail oriented. We really care about, you know, does the surgeon wear an ortho glove or do they not wear an ortho glove? Because guess what, if your doc wears an ortho glove and you don't give him one, is he gonna be upset? Yeah, probably, okay? So we need to pay attention to those differences. Okay, so glove size, you're gonna put the size and also the type. Is it an ortho glove? Is it an under glove? What is it? Okay, why are we doing the procedure? So maybe your procedure is a lap chole, okay, so that's what this is set up for here. Okay, so of course, we all know that lap chole is removal of the gallbladder, okay? So reason for the procedure is not the definition of what the procedure is. What we want there is more of the medical terms of the conditions that would cause somebody to have that type of a procedure. Okay, so what are the things that would cause someone to have a lap chole? Cholecystitis and cholelithiasis, right, which is gallstones, okay? So if you write gallstones, you're probably gonna have one of your preceptors or your instructors write medical term right beside it, okay? So guess what, you guys are medical professionals now, right? So we wanna use the medical terms. So for that, it would be cholelithiasis instead of writing gallstones. So you wanna try to give that information. Now, I had a student once say, well, I don't know why they're having a C-section. I don't really care why the specific patient is having a C-section. I just need you to give me some reasons why somebody might have a C-section, okay? So, same thing here for the lap chole. I don't really care if your patient did have gallstones or didn't have gallstones. Just tell me it's either cholecystitis, cholelithiasis, dyskinesia, those kinds of things, okay? All right, specific key anatomy. You're not gonna write things like hand, foot, liver, you know, those kinds of things. Now, of course, the liver is important, the gallbladder is important on a cholecystectomy, but more specific things. You know, what anatomy am I having to ligate in order to be able to take the gallbladder out? It's what? What structures am I isolating so that I can take it out? cystic duct and, not the common bile duct, but that's important. We want to make sure we don't clip that off, right? So cystic duct and cystic artery vein, right? Okay. So those things for sure I would have up there. So anything that you're paying extra attention to, or something I'm specifically trying to dissect out so that I can make sure it's isolated or clip it off or anything like that, those are the things that you're going to list right there. Okay. All right, unsterile equipment tends to be a lot of positioning equipment or anything else that's brought into the room. Now, you're not going to list stuff that's basic in the room, cautery machine, OR bed, those kinds of things, but anything that's special that has to be brought into the room that we really couldn't do the case without those things. Patient position, make sure you're using the actual name. The prep type, scrubber paint, DuraPrep, whatever it is. Instrument sets, so you want to make sure that you list the major sets, so major A, major B, and then any other instruments that have to get opened separately. So your scope, your camera, whatever it is for the specific type of case that you're doing. Okay, then you have sponges, drains, catheters, including the size and the type. So if I had a Foley, I would make sure that I put the size. So is it an 18 French? Is it a 16 French? What is it? Okay, and then, maybe I had a hemovac or a flat drain, whatever it might be. And then the specific sponges. So labs, Raytex, peanuts, whatever I might be using. Okay, I check mark the box for whatever types of counts were done initially upon the first closure, the second closure, and then any additional counts. So additional counts tend to be like the additional count for closure of the uterus on a C-section. Okay, so I have an additional count there. Or like at Bryan, they do that additional lights down count for any procedure where the patient is in lithotomy, just to make sure that there isn't any sponge that's retained. So that's a place where you're going to list any additional counts that might have been done. Dressings used, and we want to list those in order. So this is just an example, but I want to have them listed in the order in which they're applied to the patient. So if I had, ABD, Steri-Strips, and Metapore, of course I would want to switch it around and have my Steris and my Mastisol first, then my ABD, and then my Metapore or whatever it might be. Okay? Any specimen that you might have and what it was identified as, your wound classification, which do you guys still have? You gave that to them and it was laminated in concepts. Do you remember that sheet that had the wound classes, right? So clean, contam, and dirty. Okay, I would make sure that you put that in your progression notebook or know where that is at all times, because that's going to be helpful for you as you try to identify what wound class your procedure is. Okay, your suture down here, we have the various layers listed. You're going to list the size, the type, and the needle of each of the sutures. And then also any procedural suture that you might have. So if you're doing like an anastomosis, suturing in a mesh, anything else that you might need suture for, then that's where you're gonna list it down here. Okay, surgeon preferences. On the preference cards, sometimes they have it split out where there's circulator preferences and there's surg tech preferences. Which ones do you think you want to pay attention to? Surg tech preferences, right? Okay, so you pay attention to those, but this is not only things that are listed on the preference card. This is a good place for you to write notes for the next time that you scrub this case, right? So maybe you noticed, surgeon doesn't really, is open to answering questions, or be really quiet in the beginning because he's very serious, but then he gets more calm and you can ask questions later on. Just things that will help you the next time that you scrub with that surgeon or do that type of a case. Surgeon only likes Adson Lorenz instead of regular Adsons, whatever it is. And that's what you're going to list here. Now, just because there's no preferences listed on the preference card, because sometimes that's the case, you don't just write none listed here, okay? There's always preferences. Every surgeon has a preference about something, and there's always going to be something that you can list here, okay? Then on the back side, you're going to see where it has procedural sequence, steps including instruments used, and then instruments prepared for the procedure, not only those utilized. So under the procedural sequence, generally what students will do when you're preparing the night before is you kind of just do bullet points. You think about, okay, how's my procedure going to progress? Well, pretty much every procedure starts with the incision, right? So, or maybe an injection if we are doing a local type of case, okay? So I have the incision, I have the name, the type. Not every incision has a name, so just describe where it was, okay? And also what knife was used to make the incision. Then I have dissection, through what layers, with what instruments, those kinds of things. Retractors, lots of detail. And then you have all your procedural steps, depending on the case that you're doing, and the instruments that are utilized to accomplish each of the steps. We achieve hemostasis, we irrigate at the end, you know, how did we do that, what did we use? And then we close the layers. Well, what layers, what suture, what instruments were used, and then the dressings are applied, and sometimes we inject at the end as well. Okay. So a lot of times we'll kind of do this part and then pull the instruments out of here and then list them down here. Now, the instruments though are any instruments that are set up on the Mayo stand or the back table for use, even if they weren't actually used. Because just because you didn't use something this time, maybe it doesn't mean that next time you do the case, you're not gonna necessarily use it, okay? And a good example for that is like knee scopes. We'll prepare a whole tray of instruments for a knee scope and maybe all they used was the shaver the whole time, okay? But the next time you set up, you're still gonna prepare that whole tray of instruments. So go ahead and list all of those there so that you are ready the next time when you set up. And you want to try to include sizes and specifics about with teeth or without teeth. And you can use abbreviations, you know, like TF for tissue forceps, scissor, SC, I've seen that before. Just don't get carried away to the point where you have to give me a key at the top to tell me what the abbreviations are, because I've had some students do that. Okay. So, but otherwise, you know, don't make life hard on yourself. If you want tissue forceps with teeth, you know, you just write TFC with a line over it and then teeth. So tissue forceps with teeth, those kinds of things. Number 10, you know, blade on a number 3, whatever it is. Okay, any questions about that? So like I said, generally when students prepare the night before, they kind of do bullet points. Okay, I'm gonna have incision, I'm gonna have dissection through the layers, I'm gonna isolate the cystic duct, I'm gonna clip it off, I'm gonna dissect the gallbladder, I'm gonna achieve hemostasis, and then close my layers. You know, pull out my gallbladder, close my layers. And then after you do the case, then you can kind of add in all the details later on when you have more information. So you might know the instruments, but you might not the night before, and then you might want to wait until after you do the case to add in those details. Okay, so when you use the preference card is going to kind of give you the information for the front of the blue card, and you're going to have to use probably your procedures notes, a textbook, or YouTube videos, or other information that you might find online to do the procedural sequence on the back, okay? I would caution you against watching hours and hours of surgery videos, okay? Sometimes, I know that for some people videos are great, but videos are not a replacement for the information that's written out, okay? So you might watch it, it might make more sense to you, but it's not giving you the detailed anatomy and the detailed steps and those kinds of things, okay? So if it's in your procedures notes, that's probably a great place to start. If it's not in your procedures notes, because not every case we scrub you're gonna go over in procedures class, you might find it either in your pocket guide or in your surgical tech for the surgical tech book, or then, you know, try to search WebMD, some of your reliable resources, and then kind of watch videos as kind of your last resource. But don't spend hours and hours watching videos. I've had students that say, well, I was up, you know, until 1 o'clock in the morning because I was watching videos to get ready for my cases for today. Well, is that going to help you at all? No, you're just going to be too tired, plus you don't remember anything anyways. Okay. All right, any questions? We're going to practice filling out a blue card. So there is a mock preference card in that information that we printed off for you. It's probably right behind that pink sheet there. Okay, so we're going to fill it out for a lab chole. So you can kind of use the preference card. You can work with your neighbor or neighbors, whoever's around you.
So you guys return and work in groups.
Yep.
Off of this or off of the day
Just do today's date. That's the date that you did the case. Like that.
So
You
we'll
guys
start
return
with
and work in
that.
groups, and you can get out your AST book.
Some of them brought the pocket guide. I told them they could bring you.
Everyone.
So we'll have to find what page. I'll borrow this and find me. But yeah, we generally do the front with the preference card, and then for the back you'll have to use your additional resources. Yep. Yeah, some people like this one a lot better. So in the pocket guide, it's page 153. I'll have to look at this one too.
So this is just how they, so look on your blue card, it says procedure OR lap chole and then laparoscopic cholecystectomy. The name of the procedure is just going to be the procedure that you're doing. So how it would show up on the schedule at the hospital, okay? So you don't need to write that first OR lap chole, just write.
So this is, you're not supposed to be scrubbing with
Yeah, so you're just gonna write, it's,
We'll
yeah,
just say
lap
stop.
chole.
It's
Pick a surgeon. Yeah, this is just a practice thing, so.
The reason they list all the doctors is because sometimes another surgeon will come in and help, so then that way you know what cards or what gloves they wear. So just pick a surgeon.
So laparoscopic cholecystectomy, you hear us all saying lap chole, that's the abbreviation.
We're all about abbreviations.
Now, when you're logging in your case log, you'll write the whole thing out. On blue cards, you could write LC and I wouldn't know what you're talking about.
Yeah, they write that on the board.
Yep.
I think so.